Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on immigration changes and the impact on the life sciences sector. I'm Jill McKerney, Head of Immigration and a Senior Associate in the Employment, Pensions, Immigration and Compliance, or EPIC team, and I'm joined by Pip Haig, who is an Associate in Team EPIC. We're delighted to be joined by our guest speaker today, Janita Good, a partner and co-head of Life Sciences at Field Fisher. This webinar is intended for companies who currently hire or may wish to hire workers from outside the UK with a focus on the life sciences sector. This session is one of 4 webinars hosted by the Field Fisher immigration team in October and November. If you have any questions about today's topic, please use the question box on your control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We will then collate the questions and try to answer them during the webinar. If we don't manage to get to your question, we will follow up with you afterwards. All of our sessions are available on our website and our YouTube channel. So, according to a Sciences Industry Partnership report, the UK life sciences sector generates around £73.8 billion of turnover per year and £1 billion of inward investment per year. And the sector has the potential to create 133,000 jobs over the next 10 years. We understand that the majority of companies in the sector have raised concerns that recruitment and/or retention of skilled individuals will be an issue for growth. Roles which are vital for the future and in which there are skills gaps include biologists, data science skills, including lab and computational skills, leadership, sales, and marketing skills. To date, EU, EEA and Swiss nationals, who together I will refer to as EU nationals, have had an automatic right to live and work in the UK. Non-EU nationals are required to obtain visa sponsorship, which brings with it costs, compliance and timing considerations. The free movement of EU workers will end on 31st of December 2020, with a possible reduction of up to 80% in the flow of EU workers to the UK. A new points-based immigration system will be introduced from January 2021. These changes will require all businesses to take action, and we will look at what steps they can take. Given that the changes are only 2 months away, companies should take action now. So we'll look at the timeline. What does it mean for you? What options do you have? And we'll speak to Janita, and we'll look at then practical steps. So regarding the timeline, I've already mentioned that free movement will end on the 31st of December 2020. The government has introduced an EU settlement scheme for EU nationals to preserve their right to live and work in the UK after Brexit. Any EU national who wishes to apply to the scheme needs to have arrived in the UK before 11 p.m. on 31st of December 2020. The deadline for them to apply to the scheme is 30th of June 2021. The scheme is free of charge and is intended to be straightforward. Irish nationals will continue to be treated as permanent residents after Brexit and will not require visa sponsorship. The new immigration system is being phased in from January. EU nationals arriving from the 1st of January will require visa sponsorship to work in the same way as non-EU nationals. It's far cheaper and less onerous to apply to the EU settlement scheme than for a sponsored visa. So companies wishing to hire EU nationals not already living in the UK should consider bringing their start date forward to 2020 so that they can apply to the scheme. So the changes will have an impact on recruitment and compliance processes. So in particular, we will look at the right to work. UK employers are required to conduct right to work checks on all prospective employees and to keep records. Employers can be subject to fines of up to £20,000 per illegal worker and in some cases can be prosecuted for a criminal offence. Currently, EU nationals can rely on their passport or national ID card as proof of their right to work and can continue to do so until 30th of June 2021. Employers cannot require them to show their status under the EU settlement scheme until after 30th of June. However, you can ask if the employee is prepared to share proof of their status before then. Employers have a duty not to discriminate against EU nationals. For new hires from January, we recommend asking questions at the recruitment stage to determine if the person is eligible to apply to the scheme, and if not, to make a business decision at that stage whether to proceed with sponsoring the person. Employers should be aware that the person may be eligible to apply to the scheme through a former period of residence. So we are still encountering people who are not aware that it is mandatory for them to apply to the EU settlement scheme to continue working in the UK. Now, our recommendations are that you issue communications to encourage existing EU staff to apply sooner rather than later and remind them that it is mandatory to do so and the deadline. And we recommend that you consider bringing forward hiring dates where possible. So what are the options available for businesses? So we've briefly mentioned the EU settlement scheme, and we'll look at sponsorship now, and later Pip will look at other routes such as the graduate and global talent routes and business visitors. So to be able to sponsor non-EU nationals and from January EU nationals, the company must first apply for a sponsor license. So there are 4 requirements businesses need to meet to apply for a sponsor license. You must show that you're a genuine organisation operating lawfully in the UK. You need to show that you're honest, dependable and reliable, and you're capable of carrying out your sponsor duties and evidencing compliance. You need to show that you can offer genuine employment that meets the minimum skill and salary level. The licence application process can take around 6 to 12 weeks, and the government are urging employers to apply now to avoid delays in recruitment from January. The system has been made more flexible, which means that it will open up sponsorship to a wider range of roles than is currently the case. In particular, the minimum skill level is being lowered from degree to A-level skilled roles, and the minimum salary level is being reduced from £30,000 to £25,600. The advertising and restricted certificate of sponsorship requirements are being scrapped. So the caveat here is that sponsorship is costly. A 5-year visa can range between around £6,000 to £10,000 in government fees per person. So the government has tried to tailor sponsorship to facilitate the requirements of the life sciences and tech sectors in particular. And this table shows some examples of the roles that are eligible for sponsorship. We can see on the left-hand side job roles which will acquire additional points for PhD, shortage or STEM subjects, which means depending on which of these categories the role falls within, a lower salary can be paid, with the absolute minimum salary being £20,480 per year. In addition, currently PhD level roles are exempt from the immigration skills charge, which can reduce the government costs by between £1,800 and £5,000 per person for a 5-year visa. Employers make the same savings when sponsoring UK graduates. The government has therefore tried to make sponsorship more viable for these sectors. However, the overall burden and cost of sponsorship will remain, and employers may have to turn to alternatives such as apprenticeships and employing greater numbers of UK graduates. And Pip will take a look at the other options for employers. So with that, we're going to have a poll now to look at what your thoughts are on the topic. So the question is, the poll will come up in a minute. Do you anticipate skills shortages in your organisation due to the end of the free movement of EU nationals? So I'll give you a minute to vote on that and we'll look at the results. So the poll results look like they're in, and it's so 75% of you have said that yes, you do anticipate skill shortages, which is really interesting. 25% have said no, and nobody has said that they're not sure. So that it seems to be in line with what we're understanding, is that in the sector there are concerns about skills shortages. So it's really interesting. Thank you for participating in that. It's interesting to hear what you've said. So with that in mind, it's time for some input from Janita, our life sciences expert. So thank you very much for joining us, Janita. So we thought of some questions just that we could have a discussion around in terms of the issues that companies are facing. So I'm just going to start off by asking you one of the first questions that we thought of. The first question is, I don't know if, are you there, Janita?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, Gillian.
Thanks, Sunita. Thanks. So the first question is, life science companies are faced with regulatory investment and other issues due to Brexit. So many companies are concerned, as we've just seen, that recruitment and retention of skilled individuals will be an issue. So what we're looking at is where should immigration rank in the terms of the list of priorities for life sciences companies at the moment?
Well, Gillian, I think the poll gave some indication of where it would rank. As for the nature of the sector and the skills that the sector demands are available, at sometimes a very international level, means that organisations in any event will look to recruiting in different countries, so including obviously the EU, and given that some of the skills required are extremely particular. So, for example, in the regulatory area, there are not those many very, very highly skilled regulatory people. And therefore recruiting from outside the EU has always been within the sector an important factor, and clearly anything that is going to even just put the admin up of looking outside the UK is going to be some sort of deterrent. So another point to make is that the sector is very, very diverse. So ranges from global pharmaceutical companies who typically have permanent staff, but also a large number of temporary staff or workers, down to very small biotech companies, drug discovery companies, who can also operate at quite a virtual level. And I think looking at the biotech companies, their in-house staff, if you like, are incredibly valuable to them because there aren't those many of them. And therefore, anything that, as I mentioned, just puts the admin up is going to be something that, just from an operational point of view, will be difficult. For the large global farmers, then the nature of the projects that they conduct, so in clinical development, that will be typically on an international level, and then through into commercialization, again, pharmaceutical products will be commercialized at an international level. Anything that is restricting free movement, particularly for these workers, some of the more project-based people, is going to be an issue. So I think it is an issue for the sector, for sure.
Thank you. That's really clear. And I think that from the research that we've done, we understand that there has been a fall already in the take-up of, the applications for posts from EU PhD students, for example, and concerns about, with the existing visa system, applications being refused and the process being already complex. So that's really helpful. And interesting. Thank you. So Pip, I don't know if you want to ask, I think, another of our questions that we had in relation to the sector.
Sure, thanks, Jill. Hi, Janita. So what we found from one of our previous tech webinars where we had a conversation with Tim Bird was that tech skills are becoming so much more important across a variety of sectors, and including life sciences. And I guess what we wanted to know is, do you think that life sciences are in a position to adapt to this change? And do you think technology is going to be a driver for life sciences, and perhaps we can think about how that might impact on immigration as well.
So it's already impacting PIP, and the current situation that we're in the pandemic, clearly the use of technology was just it was catalyzed. The whole thing was catalyzed, and also in this sector. So already the delivery of healthcare was moving from a face-to-face arrangement to a video conference call arrangement, or even something even more remote and technology driven, for example, in the diagnostics space. And that has been going on for some years. As I say, a catalyst for obvious reasons during 2020. And the impact of that is that the sector not only needs, as you would imagine, the classic skill set of PhD scientists, etc., but data scientists now are becoming more and more sought after, and it's not just by the businesses that have always dealt with data, for example, CROs, but also within the therapeutic biotech companies themselves. Then we have several clients who have AI-driven technologies, so taking an existing technology and improving it through the use of AI, and that is just, in a way, as much technology as you would expect a technology to be recruiting in that area as it is in the life sciences sector. So I think in your previous seminar, when you interviewed Tim and looking at it from that side of things, then I think there is a direct read across into life sciences. But of course, life sciences also requires that very, very experienced scientific base as well. So I think the sector, if you like, is perhaps even more impacted than the pure technology sector.
Great, thanks for that, Janita. Thank you. Okay, so I think now we're going to move on and have a look at perhaps now actually might be good to have another poll where we're thinking about life sciences is impacted, but also how are you impacted? So if we have a look at what the question is, so the poll question is, are you confident that your policies are up to date to accommodate the end of free movement of EU nationals? And that question will shortly appear on your screen. So again, that question is, are you confident that your policies are up to date to accommodate the end of free movement of EU nationals? And you can select yes, no, or not sure. So we'll just allow a minute or two for those responses. Okay, I actually don't think anybody participated in that poll, but I think, as we just discussed with Janita, in particular, direct correlations are happening between tech and life sciences, where individuals are thinking about what they need to be doing to manage global mobility, but also UK inbound immigration. And in order to sort of resolve that, they're taking stock of what their current systems are in order to learn how they need to adapt. So from our previous poll, we identified that it was probably a 50-50 split between those who were confident that their policies were updated to accommodate the end of free movement of EU nationals and those that weren't. So now we'll take a look, we'll take a quick tour of some of the other long-term options available to businesses. And these are the routes that don't require sponsorship. And that in turn means that they will incur less immigration cost. So students and graduates represent a new pool of talent, and the rules have been relaxed, allowing more time for employers to arrange employment using these non-sponsored routes. So for example, if we look at students, they can apply up to 6 months in advance of their course ending, and that means that businesses can look to recruit students early. The postgraduate study time limit's also been removed, and that means in turn there are reduced documentary requirements for this route, so it's quite attractive. The second option is the graduate route, which is launching in summer next year, and that's going to allow graduates to apply for a visa to remain in the UK for 2 years after they've completed their studies. So they can look to start work at any skill level, and that time period is actually 3 years if you've completed a PhD. And some listeners might remember this. This used to be quite similar to what we used to be in place. It was called the post-study work route. The third option is the global talent route, and this will be available to EU citizens on the same basis as non-EU citizens from the 1st of January. The most highly skilled who can achieve the required level of points will be able to enter the UK without a job offer if they're endorsed by a relevant and competent body. The scheme was recently expanded to be more accessible to those with a background in STEM subjects who wish to come to the UK. And examples of endorsing bodies include the Royal Society for Science and Medicine. Then we've got the innovator route. So this is useful for individuals who may be setting up or running a business in the UK. £50,000 of investment funds are needed if it's a new business. It's a great opportunity that doesn't require sponsorship, but it does require getting endorsed. And you've got to be able to show that you have a business idea that's new, innovative, and viable. Next, we'll have a look at a short-term option. So we're going to look at business visitors. So from January 2021, those that don't qualify to the EU settlement scheme will be considered non-visa nationals. This means that EU nationals don't need a visa to come to the UK for a period of less than 6 months, unless it's a requirement of the immigration category that they're entering. So EU citizens can visit the UK for a business trip, provided they can demonstrate that they're entering the UK and they're a genuine visitor, and they're doing so for the purpose of carrying out business activities. And types of business activities are restricted. Visitors aren't able to undertake productive work in that category, and it can't be used to circumvent the work visa requirements. And this basically means that genuine visitors have got to be able to demonstrate that they don't intend to work in the UK and that they're only going to come and undertake permitted activities. The length of the visit doesn't determine whether a work visa is required, and visitors are not allowed to fill a role or provide short-term cover within the UK, and they can't be paid within the UK. The overarching limitation of the business visitor routes is that a visa is required prior to entry to be able to work in the UK. The route itself is becoming more popular with businesses planning one or a short series of visits to the UK, but we'd highlight that the business visitor route is complex, and the rules may be changing in the near future. So we'd suggest that anyone seeking to enter the UK as a business visitor obtains legal advice before travelling. So we have a couple of case studies here. The first one is you're a medical device company. You wish to employ Miranda from the 1st of July 2021 as a project manager, and Miranda is an EU national. So what immigration routes are available to her? So as Miranda is an EU national, the first step for the company to take is at the recruitment stage, where they could request a copy of her right to work. This would currently include her passport, but by the time she starts working, this would include her pre-settled or settled status code issued after she'd applied to the EU settlement scheme. So in this scenario, luckily Amanda's already applied to the EU settlement scheme and she has settled status. So conducting a compliant right to work check would resolve this case study. Secondly, we've got Bob, who sells medical equipment and wants to do a presentation for Bupa in February next year with a view to striking a deal for supply. Bob is from France and he has never been to the UK. So he's not able to apply to the EU settlement scheme, and on the face of it, he doesn't want to work in the UK, he just wants to do a presentation. But if you delve a bit deeper, you can also see that he wants to probably visit Bupa's premises and possibly negotiate a deal. So from January 2021, he's going to need a business visitor visa to enter the UK, and he needs to ensure that the activities he carries out fall within the permitted activities in the business visitor route. Presenting, negotiating and signing deals and contracts are permitted activities. The practicalities of obtaining a visa might seem strange for Bob because he's an EU national. He can use the passport e-gates, and he can continue to do so from the 1st of January. But what he needs to ensure is that at the UK border, he enters as a business visitor. The fine for illegally working is £20,000 per worker. And as we mentioned, there's an update due to the business visitor rules, so he should seek legal advice prior to travelling. If we flipped this scenario around, and if Bob was coming to the UK as a leader in his field to be a senior researcher, he could look to apply via the global talent route. Finally, we've got the third scenario. So you're a large multinational pharma company. You have identified 20 technicians that you wish to send to the UK on a specific project, and the technicians are from India. So here we've got non-EU nationals requiring a visa to work in the UK. The process is similar to what we know now, which is that visa sponsorship is required. And the devil is always in the detail, which means that the rules of sponsorship themselves have changed, and it's actually becoming slightly more relaxed and flexible for existing sponsors. So finally, we've got a couple of practical steps here to look through, and we've put together what's called a toolkit for success. So the first thing that we need to think about doing is identifying what the current position is. So we have been suggesting that you conduct a workforce audit to identify your EU population in the UK and your UK population in the EU, and identify any skills gaps that you currently have or will have in the future. Secondly, you need to review how the new immigration rules impact your current processes, including recruitment, immigration policies and compliance processes, and whether your team needs training needs around these areas. Thirdly, you'll need to strategize. If you're in the UK, you should look to applying for a sponsor license. If you have one, you may need to increase the allocation of certificates of sponsorship. Sponsorship carries with it additional costs, so you'll need to think about budgeting adequately and making sure that you've got adequate resources to manage the process. Then finally, you'll need to manage and implement the change. This will include communicating to staff members responsible for recruitment and management, updating processes, and taking legal advice where necessary. Finally, what are the takeaways? Well, there's less than 3 months to go. It's important to keep yourself updated regularly. Things are changing all the time. Keep communicating with those responsible for implementing changes and with your workforce, and take advice where necessary. So we may have time for a quick question. We have one in our questions box. So the question is, what is the impact of Brexit for those in European countries? Will they have a sponsorship system?
Thanks, Pip. And I thought it just might be worth just also pointing out, I think it was a bit slightly glitch in our system, but 100% of people voted not sure in that second poll question. So it's interesting to hear that people are still at this stage reviewing their processes and policies. But thank you. In relation to your question, I think we also have another question which we'll have to follow up on later. But in relation to this question, so there are similar systems in place in various EU countries which mirror the EU settlement scheme, but the advice really just simply is to check locally with local legal advisors on what the requirements are in those specific countries. So if you did answer us a question and we haven't got to you, we will get to you after the webinar. So thank you again to Janita Good for joining us. It's really useful and helpful to have those some insight from a sector experts. And we just want to flag up, we have a couple of other webinars coming up in the series. So the next one will be immigration changes and the impact on people and employment. Thank you very much for joining.